And of course, on brand, we're just having some other technical issues right now just with Facebook. It's on Facebook's end. So we're just trying to reconnect really quick and then we should get going. Just give us one sec. Terry, it looks like we still can't hear you, unfortunately. Is there any way you might be able to log on through your iPhone? Oh, I see. Okay. I think I understand you.
All right. We are live. Well, welcome to an exciting live stream. To celebrate last week's National Sci-Fi Day, we're going to be talking with some of the most renowned minds in the incredible genre of science fiction. I'm your moderator today. My name is Joshua Del Toro, and I have been obsessed with reading specifically science fiction books since as long as I can remember. A couple years ago, I started posting and gaining a following on Book Talk, where I get to share my love of reading with so many people. And a little over a year ago, I launched a podcast called Joshua Space, where I get to interview incredible authors. And now I get to moderate amazing panels like this one with Podium. Joining us today are some truly legendary authors. We have Craig Alanson, renowned for his New York Times best-selling series Expeditionary Force, Glynn Stewart, the brilliant mind behind Starship's Mage, and Terry Maggert, the creative force behind the enthralling Backyard Starship series. Alongside them, we have the incredibly talented narrator Jeffrey Kafer, who brought to life the worlds of Starship's Mage, Backyard Starship, and so many other incredible titles. As many of you are aware, science fiction has surged as a genre that melds the thrills of futuristic exploration with thought-provoking narratives, captivating the imagination of masses worldwide. It invites enthusiasts, whether they read with their eyes or with their ears, into intricately designed worlds where technology intertwines with the human experience, blurring the boundaries between what's real and what's fantastical. Podium serves as a cornerstone in celebrating the genre's vast influence and popularity. Functioning as a premier publisher, Podium fosters a vibrant community connecting authors, enthusiasts, and visionaries. Podium's unwavering commitment to crafting exceptional narratives has not only elevated the science fiction experience, but captivated audiences, instilling in them an insatiable hunger for more thrilling adventures. In this roundtable discussion, we're set to explore the creative minds behind these esteemed authors and narrators, uncovering the complexities of their craft, the inspirations that drive them, and the sheer magic they infuse into the science fiction realm. Prepare to immerse yourselves in a universe where technological wonders and captivating tales intersect, celebrating a genre that has seized the fascination of millions. So take a seat or stand, depending on where you're at. Brace yourselves for a cosmic journey and join us as we traverse the depths of science fiction where the limits of imagination vanish and adventures await us at every starlit corner. Well, I'm now going to turn the floor over to the panelists and have them briefly introduce themselves, mention any upcoming releases, tell anyone how they got started writing or narrating in the science fiction world. Let's go ahead and start with Craig Alanson.
Hey, Craig Alanson. I got started writing because, and I've told this story many times, my wife and I were going on vacation, and we're in the airport, and she says, "How many books do you have to read this week?" And I showed her the book. She says, "You're going to drive me crazy because you're going to finish that book in a day and then sit there on the beach saying, let's do this and let's do that." So I went to the airport bookstore, bought a book, sci-fi book, by an author I like. It was freaking awful. And I'm reading it and I'm like, okay, this has got to get better. And it got worse. And it was like the worst book I ever finished. And I literally, when I finished it, tossed it over my shoulder on the beach and said, if that thing can get published, I can write a book. And kind of went from there.
That's awesome. Jeffrey, how'd you get
that writer who will not be named has said it wasn't his best book. So
I'm sure he's grown as an author too. We would hope that he's grown as an author too as the years go by. Jeffrey, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Kafer. I'm a narrator. I'm one of the guys who doesn't write a word. I just read other people's words. I actually got started in sci-fi in a totally different career. I was a video game tester for Microsoft 20 years ago. I worked on some of the seminal games, Mass Effect, Gears of War, Halo, Fable 2, Zoo Tycoon. I'm sure y'all remember Zoo Tycoon.
Oh, yeah.
And then I found this author named Jeremy Robinson, and I did his first books, and we sort of rose together in the world of audiobooks. I don't do much for him anymore. Some other narrator, I don't know his name, does his books. I don't remember his name. He's forgettable. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So anyway, Jeremy Robinson was my start. I'm doing more of his coming up. And since then I've done over 1,000 audiobooks. So that's me.
I could have guessed you're a narrator just by your voice.
Oh, thank you.
It's got the voice.
And that you said over 1,000 books?
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
That is absolutely impressive. Glynn, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Glynn Stewart. I've written a lot of things, apparently, somewhere around 70, 75. I have literally lost count how many books I have written and published. I have to pull up a spreadsheet to pull the number. The main series I'm best known for is Starship's Mage, also Castle Federation, Duchy of Terra, the rest of the list, Peacekeepers of Soul. It's a Starship's Mage book that we have coming out this month that I'm supposed to pimp out. And so I am wearing the Starship's Mage t-shirt, the Curiosity City University. And I have been writing for as long as I can remember, including absolutely terrifying my grade 4 teacher with a very Canadiana story of ice skating mice killing each other with machine guns. And it's all downhill from there.
Canadian mice are supposed to be nice. They give each other poutine.
Not when we're playing hockey.
Okay. Yeah, it's true.
Not when Glenn's writing them, apparently. All right, and now we'll go ahead and turn it over to Terry.
Hey, Terry. Oh, can't hear.
We cannot hear. Okay. So we will circle back to Terry. We'll get his mic squared away. But to start, I wanted to start on the deep end with a question this time around instead of starting everyone off easy. So the question I have geared for the first is, how do you see the evolution of science fiction storytelling, particularly in an era where technology seems to be rapidly changing and catching up with speculative ideas? And what new narrative forms or themes do you anticipate emerging in the genre's future? And does anyone want to give that a go? It's a bit of a complicated one. And Craig?
I have no idea, and that's the point. I mean, it is. sci-fi 10 years from now is going to come from the imagination of people who are writing sci-fi 10 years from now, and they're going to be influenced by what has happened in the next 10 years. AI, nanotechnology, biomedicine, who knows? Yeah, we may actually land on Mars, and all of a sudden you can't write any more first journey to Mars stories because we've already landed there. So yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Glenn.
Basically, what Craig said is like, everything we write is wrong. I used to do forecasting, budgets, modeling, predicting the future was my job back when I had an actual job.
Yeah.
And every model, every forecast, every prediction, every vision of the future is wrong. It is impossible for it to be right. Science marches on is the thing on TV tropes. I'm assuming it's still called that. I'm not as active on TV tropes as I once was.
Yeah.
History marches on. The world marches on. People march on. And the stories that endure aren't the ones that are about the flashy tech. They're the ones that are about people. They're the ones that are about the theme. They're about the adventure. They're about the characters and their interactions with each other. From a certain perspective, what science I pull into my work and all of that is irrelevant. I say that as a science fiction author, but it's like, yeah, I'm keeping up with what's going on with science and what's expected to change and what is changing. And what I write today draws on different science than what I wrote when I started 10 years ago. But it isn't, but at the same time, the core of the stories isn't about the science. It's difficult, though it can be done, to carry 100,000 words of a novel on a fancy scientific gimmick. It's a lot easier to carry it on a political conflict, 7 characters arguing with each other, and having 3 scientific gimmicks in the background to add flavor and interesting tricks.
Yeah, like the Martian. Okay, the story The Martian, it was all about science, but that's not what it made it interesting. It was about the guy trapped in the planet by himself and how, his personal journey of, I got to science the blank out of this to survive. And people on Earth don't even know I'm there. I mean, there's a story by Heinlein where he has a character, Slipstick Libby, and they're navigating this starship with a slide rule. Because back then, Heinlein didn't have the idea of computers. I went back and reread the story about 10 years ago. The story holds up. The characters are great. It's a great story. I don't care the fact that they're not using a pocket calculator to navigate the starship or have a mage doing it. It's a guy with a slide rule. I mean, trying to guess the future is just a waste of time. I cheat in my books because it's near future sci-fi, like Stargate is. So it makes the characters more relatable because they drive cars and they don't teleport around and all that. I mean, like Glynn said, it doesn't matter what the technology is. It's still about people. And the technology may change how people react to things, to events, and how they can react to events. But ultimately, it's about the characters.
I just hope people don't notice too hard that a lot of my stories, I have adjusted them as I proceeded forward. When they started, Brexit hadn't happened yet. Yeah. So a lot of my settings draw on the European Union and assume England's part of it. So that is corrected in the later books, but that underlying assumption is definitely there in some of my earlier work, and it's baked into the settings. And I'm like, we're going to sort of plaster over that and hope no one notices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
History marches on.
Yeah. And it's amazing how quickly history can march on, too.
Mm-hmm.
So with technology leaping forward and there's always something new being produced, is there any tool or weapon from your stories that you would love to see made in real life?
Oh, yeah, the jump drive technology, like Battlestar Galactica, where instead of a ship like on Star Trek traveling through all the boring parts between stars, you just instantly jump through a wormhole on Einstein-Rosen bridge from one place to the other. I mean, that'd be amazing. Except some jerk would turn into a weapon. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the hard part a lot of times. Anything could be made into a weapon at some point.
Not marshmallow fluff.
I can think of ways.
It is pure goodness. You can't make it evil. Yes.
I can think of ways.
Of course you could. What's your favorite technology from you?
I'm going to be lazy and go with the same one as you. Honestly, it's the ability to go further and faster than we ever thought we could do, and do it safely. I mean, right now we'd have a real difficulty safely visiting Mars, but in most of my books, that's old hat. We've been there, done that. One case waved a magic wand and said, "No, Mars is going to be perfectly happy and safe to live on now."
Yeah.
Okay,
So Jeffrey,
waved a magic wand is a drastic understatement, but you know.
Jeffrey, of the books you've narrated, what's like the coolest technology you remember?
Well, I think you touched on it. It's you call it hyperdrive. I guess it's FTL, the faster than light travel.
Yeah.
And it's funny, in the Frontier Saga, it's a bit of a spoiler, it is used as a weapon to, I can't give it away, but
yeah. Relativistic weapon. Yeah.
Think fighter jets or fighter starships and faster than light travel, and something near term right there. Just slingshot. Think of it that way. So it's been used, and I'm sure more creative minds will continue to use that for storytelling. But to sort of go back to the other question, sorry, I just wanted to say that sci-fi, the genre, and all of these things are kind of just overlays for a story about relationships and people. I just recently did William Shatner's Tech War series, name drop, and it was sci-fi, but it was really detective noir, which was really about him and his relationship with himself in a lot of ways. So all stories are basically about people and relationships to other people.
So you got to meet William Shatner.
I actually did an interview with him for the audiobook, and it was through Podium, and they had me sign in 15 minutes early, and Podium wasn't there. It was just William Shatner. So I'm sitting there with William Shatner going, what do I talk about? And he was charming.
In those books, tech is like a drug, right?
Tech is a drug.
Yeah, the drug, yeah. I read some of those books like years ago.
Right.
Yeah, same. Yeah. I think I even watched a good chunk of the absolutely terrible TV show.
Yes.
Yeah. Not the best.
They're fun, nostalgic blast back to the 80s. Sorry, Joshua.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, because we're talking about different tools and weapons, and a lot of times in science fiction books, the names for the tools and weapons can be a little complicated. So how do you combat that when you're narrating the books?
Nicknames. I read military sci-fi. In the military, they got a nickname for everything. And they want to make it as simple as possible, because if you're in combat, you don't have to think about what the hell is this thing called. Yeah.
Nobody talks, like, to use the example of Peacekeepers, where I just finished writing a novel, nobody talks about the icosospatial momentum impulse generators.
Yeah.
Nobody. It's the skip drive.
Yes.
They usually drop the full name once in the book somewhere.
Yeah.
But I suspect that in 7 books, that name is probably in the series less than 8 times.
Yeah.
It's the skip drive. No one calls it anything else.
Yeah. Scalzi uses skip drive also in his Old Man's War series, right?
I think so, yeah. It's been a while.
His technology is different than yours, but it's both called skip drive.
Yeah.
His is actually, you're jumping into a different, very similar parallel universe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An interesting concept with all sorts of consequences that I remember not in the 3 books that I read of it, because I didn't actually finish the series. I don't think he didn't delve into the consequences of that too much, but I'm pretty sure he did in later books.
In the second book, there's a problem where the enemy can actually predict where the ship's going to jump into, which should be theoretically impossible. Like your ship jumps into the alternate universe at the same time the alternate universe ship's jumping into your universe, and one of them doesn't arrive, and theoretically that can't happen because the other ship already jumped or something. But it's in Ghost Brigades, I think.
I don't remember that, but like I said, it's been a long time since I read those books.
Yeah. He's writing another Old Man's War, he announced.
Oh.
Yeah, because he's under contract for it. I think he's going to write it in 25 or 6, I think it is. He's announcing it. So
he's a busy man.
Yeah.
It's a lot of books.
Yeah.
So, Jeffrey, when you do come across a complicated word or term for a gadget or for military slang, how do you like? Have you ever had any slip ups where it just really throws you off for a minute?
Yeah. You
That's
know,
what
it's
editing's
not
for.
the sci-fi words that screw me up as much as real words that have an actual pronunciation. So the made up stuff is easy because I can just coordinate with the author and they're like, whatever you want to say, however you want to say this. And I'm like, all right, cool. It's the real words that are not in use. So, Glynn, is it simulacrum or simulacrum?
Simulacrum.
Okay,
But I don't know.
because they said it right the first 10 books. Somebody corrected me on simulacrum. They're like, it's simulacrum. I'm like,
You want an awful one, Jeffrey?
What's that?
I pronounce it McLaughlin, not McLaughlin.
Okay, so you have a lot of Irish in yours.
Yeah.
Scottish, actually.
Is it? Oh, Scottish.
My background is Scottish and Welsh.
Okay, please don't ever put a character in that requires me to do a Scottish accent because I cannot.
No, the worst is Welsh pronunciation. Because I'm part Welsh.
You're not the main Peacekeeper, so you're good. Peacekeepers has someone with a Scottish accent.
Yeah.
Who actively makes it worse when he's irritated with people.
Yes.
Jeffrey, are there certain, there's a narrator I know who hates doing certain accents. Are there certain accents you hate doing?
I cannot do Scottish.
Aha.
Well, funnily, Scottish is the only one I can do.
Well, so none of my accents are actually super great, right? And that's, I mean, the perfect narrator is fluent in every single accent possible,
Language,
right? But that's kind of an impossibility.
Yeah.
But there's ones that I actively avoid, which would be Scottish. Some of the more obscure ones, like South African.
Oh, that's tough. Yeah.
Some of the various areas of England, like you mentioned Welsh. I don't even know what that sounds like. Right? There's
a bunch of vowels thrown in a blender with some L's.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not something I would do.
And I say that as someone who cannot speak Welsh, but learned to pronounce a lot of Welsh area names when I lived there.
Josh, you asked about, pronunciations. It's up to the writer when they make up a word, or in my case, when I'm using a military term, like in the very first book, my narrator pronounced DFAC, which is dining facility, and it should be pronounced DFAC. And I just kind of assumed he knew that. And no, I should not have assumed that. So now I give a pronunciation guide and not only write it out, I record it as a voice note twice each time. So I know it's DFAC, not DFAC. Yeah.
Yeah. That's an interesting one I'm playing with for the current. What I'm playing with for a new series is actually specifying that no, it is not RKAN, it's Arcan and similar stuff.
Yeah, the military.
But there are some cases where they do, like heads up display is not a HUD, it's an HUD. So you got to be, it's not consistent.
I have always called it a HUD. And that comes back to my video game days.
Yeah.
It's the only place I really know it from too. So.
Yeah. The military stuff is challenging because I don't know if there's any one central repository for it. I got screwed up on the word SABOT.
Sabo.
Sabo.
Are you sure?
Sabo. Yeah.
Okay, because there was a lot of question about how that is.
Yeah, it's a sleeve that the shell fits in.
Sabo.
Discarded. Yeah. Anyway.
Said Sabo or Sabo? Sabo.
Sabo. It's the correct pronunciation of the word is Sabo, but the U.S. military pronounces it as Sabo. That's what I've heard from tankers. It's generally a 110 millimeter tank shell.
These are the challenges of my job.
Yeah, well, especially because I think so. Like specifically with that word, it's a French word, so there's the French pronunciation, but there's also the American military pronunciation.
Yeah.
So in a sense, it really depends on where the story is taking place. And I think that's like what you were saying, Craig, how it really is up to the author to a certain extent to kind of tell the narrator where or how certain things can be pronounced or where it's coming from, because there's more pronunciations.
It's in space. What do you mean? Where is it taking place? It's in space.
Yeah.
So then you have the question.
in the Navy and therefore in the Marine Corps, like a ceiling on a ship is not a ceiling, it's an overhead. But if you're in a Marine Corps building, like a house, that's the overhead. It's a building, but that's the
Also add in the complication of which Navy.
Yeah.
A lot of my derivations are actually drawn from the Royal Navy, the Canadian Navy, and European navies. Yeah. Because if you actually scratch the surface of most of my settings, they're Euro-dominated, not US-dominated.
Yeah.
Actually, Euro-Chinese dominated, with the Euro-Chinese-US is usually the trifecta I have going on in most of my settings. And so there's actually a lot of European influence, and specifically Royal Navy, because that's where I actually have sources to assess. And so there ends up being a lot of that Royal Navy language baked into my stuff, as opposed to US Navy baked into my stuff, which again is different words for things, different pronunciations for things.
Yeah. In my books, it started out that the coalition was the US, UK, France, India, and China. And because there was 3 partners were part of NATO, they standardized on NATO definitions for everything. Just because I didn't want to learn the Chinese or Indian military terms for things.
My copy editor was very grumpy with me, mildly grumpy with me, for using Chinese ranks without actually explaining in text what they were.
Yeah.
He made me go back and actually explain that the rank I had used is the equivalent of a vice admiral. I just used the Chinese without bothering to provide any context.
Like the Chinese, their 1-star is actually a senior colonel, not a brigadier general. It's the way they do things. Yeah. But anyway.
How much, speaking of, because talking about research and having to explain things, how much research do you guys do to write a new series or a new novel?
Well, I cheat because my sci-fi is set in near term. So other than inventing new uses for current technology or bending our current understanding of physics with the idea that 10 years from now our understanding is going to change, I don't have to do much. And my urban fantasy series is set now. So other than adding an overlay of magic on it, it's now. I don't have to really invent anything new there. So it's a lot easier that way.
So I do a lot of research, and almost none of it is actually directly related to whatever I'm working on. In terms of actual direct, I am working on this now. I need an answer to a question. It is either an email or a phone call to somebody I know. Let's be honest, a WhatsApp message. I don't phone people. I am a millennial. Yeah. Or Wikipedia, frankly, because for the level of depth I need, which is by and large to make sure I don't get something blatantly wrong, Wikipedia is fine. But outside of that, I do a lot of keeping up on what's current in technology. I do quite a bit of keeping up on what's current in economics, accounting, real estate. That's my old hat. So it hasn't fully fallen off yet, even after 10 years. And yes, the fact that it's been 10 years hurts my head. But also I was always a bit of a history nerd. And then over the last few years, I have picked up an even worse habit of being a military history nerd, to the point where I am now reading academic papers and people's theses and these kinds of things. And I have a shelf just down over there that is just this stack of, they make university textbooks look cheap kind of reference books. Things, but the people who know would recognize the names Norman Friedman, David Brown. These are very expensive, quite technical, heavy reference books into the U.S. and British navies. And I joke about most of my military history. My interest begins when they put steam engines on ships, and it ends roughly when they put missiles on ships.
Have you always been interested in doing deep research like that, or did that come once you started writing?
I always was interested, but never was doing. Never to this depth. I say the Alexes, but no one would actually know who I mean. Dr. Alexander Clark and Drakenefels off of YouTube, except not their YouTube channels, them literally arriving in town where I lived, kidnapping me, dragging me across the border, and walking me through a couple of old U.S. museum ships. It's Alex Clark, and I don't actually remember Trinkenfeld's last name. He can yell at me for that later. But they were in Canada doing a research trip with a couple of other guys from the UK, and I ended up hosting them for dinner the night they landed. And 2 days later, it's like, so we're crossing the border to Buffalo, and would you like to come with us and go through the cruiser with us? And I'm like, you know what? Sure.
That's awesome.
Cool.
So I got to wander around USS Little Rock with a couple of really top tier historians out of the UK.
That's amazing. That's
I did one of my books had a space station orbiting a neutron star, and at that point the station is dragging gravity along with it, and there's time dilation effects. And I had this big long spreadsheet. I was calculating things, and I have a lot of cases in my book where space combat takes place at long ranges. So you're firing a maser beam at a ship. By the time the maser beam gets there, the other ship is moved.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's and I used to, in the early books, I made a mistake of putting in
numbers.
Yeah, specific numbers for things. And the problem is some guy sitting in his underwear in his mom's basement is like, well, it's not actually 45 meters per second. And so, Jesus, dude, doesn't matter. So now it's far or near or close or something. It's like, don't.
I have to watch the balance there because I do all the math.
Yes.
And I need to, in some of the series, I am a bit more transparent about the math.
Yeah.
And some of the series, I'm significantly less transparent about the math. And I need to be very careful sometimes about, I might have done the work, but I don't need to put it in the book unless it's the series where the readers are expecting it. It's like the Castle Federation series, people are expecting me to show my work because I've been showing my work in that series since 2016.
Yeah.
My Scattered Stars series, I don't show my work to the point where it actually kind of screwed me up because stuff changed over the series because I wasn't keeping good enough notes. I can admit that now that the series is done.
I did something where, like, the ship launches a weapon, and then there's a bunch of dialogue on the ship, and then there's impact. And I'm like, hey, wait a minute, I need to actually record, sound out how long does it take those people to say that dialogue, and then I'll go back and say time to impact 45 seconds. Even though, like, Jeff, if you were narrating it, because I have description in there, it's actually 2 minutes, but there's 45 seconds of talking in there. And that's why I'll go back and say 45 seconds. Because
one of the cheats I have on that is that the two series where I am more transparent about the timing, no one's actually talking out loud. All of the conversations in battle are in implants.
Yeah. Okay.
So suddenly the time that it takes them to speed of thought is a lot harder to calculate than speed of people talking.
Yeah.
Just a little bit harder. So I have another question, though I want to start with Jeffrey this time. Because I was thinking of a lot of times, especially in TV shows, there's usually a theme song. For books, do you ever have a theme song or a song that you correlate with a book that you narrate?
I do a lot of Terry's Backyard Starship, and it kind of reminds me of the Orville a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of that comedy sci-fi, but kind of grounded in some reality and social issues, et cetera, et cetera. So that one's always a nice one to think about or play or, keep in mind when doing that particular series. But all sci-fi is different. Doing some of the Sentence to War series, which is more hardcore mill sci-fi. That's kind of hard to put a song to. I think maybe of like battlefield drum beats kind of a thing instead. So it kind of depends on the book.
That makes sense.
Yeah, like when I'm writing, if I'm writing a battle scene, I'm not listening to new age music. I'm listening to thrash rock.
I'm listening to Sabaton. Who are we kidding?
Yeah.
Pretty consistently, Sabaton makes for the best battle scenes, in my opinion. But
I listen to a lot of like Linkin Park and
yeah, that too.
Like that.
Generally, when I am writing, it is either a random mix of everything, some pretty specific playlists around the heavy metal side, Sabaton, some of it's similar, some of it's ilk, or it's purely instrumental, and it's like the audio machine and stuff. But there is actually I'd have to track down and have to check with my partner where it is, but there is a piece that was composed as a Starships Mage theme tune.
Cool.
Wow.
I've never
I
done
used to do a
anything.
lot of like
Did get
movie
it made.
soundtracks and Moby and background stuff, because if there's too much voices, it kind of interrupts my thought process.
Sometimes I need to do that. Like I understand exactly what you mean, because I have those days and I could easily see that being an impediment all the time. For me, I find it's that most of the time I'm better off with just music running in the background, regular pop, whatever. But I definitely have the days where it's like, no, I cannot have lyrics. I cannot have words. I cannot have anything my brain is trying to engage with to understand what's going on. It has to just be silent, instrumental. Yeah.
That makes sense. Otherwise, it takes away a little bit
from
the focus. So I had a fun question that I thought would be a fun one for everyone. If you could swap lives with a character from either one of your own science fiction universes or any science fiction character for a whole day, who would you choose, or who would it be and why?
For me, I would actually choose from my the main character from my urban fantasy series, because he's a wizard and he has these magical powers and can perceive things that are different. And that would be, and he can talk to his dog. So that would just be amazing for a day to do that.
It'd be fun to know what the dog's inner thoughts are, and kind of scary at the same time.
Yeah. Probably a lot about food, I think.
Yeah. Or that we're holding them hostage when we take them, one of the two.
Yes. Why are you concerned about my poop? Why are you picking it up all the time? Are you selling it? Yeah, I put that in the books too. Glynn?
My brain just fell out my ears. The problem with that is that most of my characters are the heroes of adventure stories, and adventure is someone else in deep blank, very far away. So I would probably have to say Damian Montgomery, post-marriage and retirement from field duty. So when Damian Montgomery is a politician on Mars, and his biggest worry is my wife in town this week, or is she off in another star system doing her job? A swap for a day with him there. Yeah, sure. Never at a point where the said character is on page in one of my books.
Yeah. So Jeffrey, of the characters you've narrated, who would you most like to be?
It'd be easy to say any of the swashbuckling, daring guys, but I think it'd be kind of interesting to be Ishmael Wong from Nathan Lowell's Quarter Share series.
My wife is also a big fan of Nathan Lowell.
Yeah, so I did I did that whole series. That's like his seminal series, and there's no aliens, there's no lasers, there's no space battles. It's a guy trying to figure out how to staff the kitchen and make coffee, and sort of that slice of life in space thing.
It's amazing.
I don't really want to go into space and wonder if I'm going to die, right? I'd rather just make coffee.
There was a point when Nathan was getting harassed.
He had a scene in one of his books where, like, the captain wanted to give people a tour, but they couldn't because they had to be workers. So he gave them all a sponge, and they cleaned a little bit of the ship as they went along, or something.
Yep.
Like that was a pretty cool scene. Yeah, I like that.
Yep.
I remember the one conversation I had with Nathan when he had the one book where there was the big conspiracy, and the main character resolved the conspiracy and handed it over to proper authorities.
Yes.
And a bunch of people were like really thrown that they didn't get to see, the Navy swarm in and deal with the situation. And I don't remember if I ever actually did, but I was chatting with Nathan quite a bit at the time, and I had the impulse of, should ask Nathan if he wants me to just write that as a novella for him. People can see that and feel content that they actually got to see the resolution. But that's not the type of book Nathan is writing. It's the type of book I write. It's not the type of book Nathan writes. We have very different areas that we focus on.
Yeah, everything I write is like, the end of the world's going to end, humanity is going to be extinct, the galaxy is going to blow up, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger stakes. Yeah,
I try to keep the scales down from there, but I did write Duchy of Terra where things were eating everything, so I can't say too much.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement. I would want to swap lives with the character when there's a certain character that comes to mind. I'm not going to say the specifics because of spoilers, but a certain main character in a certain book who ends up somehow kind of sort of becoming friends with an artificial intelligence that's not really from around here. And there's a time when it's just kind of them and they're not really having to worry about everything that's going on around them. And they just have this banter that's going on. I wouldn't mind that. Like, I just want to have a conversation with a super intelligent artificial intelligence that's like not even from around here and just knows everything about everything and not have to worry for a day. That would be nice.
Is that super intelligence an asshole?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the last question I wanted to ask before we move on to audience questions, if you were to write a book in a completely different genre, something you've never done before, what would it be?
Oh, I mean, probably reverse harem romances, billionaire mafia. I mean, I've written those under a different name. Don't tell anybody, but no, I'd like to write a thriller at some point. I've had ideas for that, but the problem is, I'm like, oh, I got an idea. Somebody already wrote that, and then somebody already wrote that. It's like there's so many books out there, and I'd want to write something that's different. So, yeah, no, I'd like to get into thrillers. I think. I mean, I've already switched from military sci-fi to contemporary or urban fantasy, and that was a big risk because some of my audience followed me, and some of them are like, it's not my thing. Yeah. I mean, Glynn, you've written in many different genres already.
I have to think of a genre I haven't written in.
Yeah.
I mean, I have written what on the surface is techno thriller fantasy, and anything more than that is a spoiler. I have written epic fantasy in 3 different directions, one of which is no longer available for purchase. I have written urban fantasy, I have written fantasy/weird Western, and I have written space opera and space opera fantasy. The one that keeps rattling around my head that I haven't written, and I probably should actually sit down and write the outline for this because it's getting that detailed in my head, is the cyberpunk thriller, for which I blame Cyberpunk 2077 without hesitation, much as I can blame my fantasy westerns on Red Dead Redemption without hesitation.
Yeah.
I have a video game habit.
You know, the in that Cyberpunk 2077, the gun Skippy.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Apparently I'm huge in Poland. It's one of the places I'm published in a different language.
Cool.
And developers of that game are in Poland, and somebody apparently was a fan.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So Jeffrey, if you were going to narrate in a different genre, what would that be?
Well, so I literally narrate in all of them.
Okay.
I don't think there's a genre that I have not narrated in. Sci-fi and romance are my 2 biggest ones. So you really had me with the whole harem thing. Let's talk.
Okay, so you obviously do tentacle erotica. So that's a big.
I have done. Yes, I have.
There were times on the Facebook, Instagram where they're promoting something, and I'm like, this has got to be a joke. And I'll Google it, and I'm like, oh my god, it's not. It's.
Yeah. Well.
So have you narrated Chuck Tingle yet?
No, I have not. No.
So, Jeffrey, is there, because obviously you said romance and science fiction are your 2 most narrated genres, is there one that you would want to do more of that you don't currently do a lot of?
I really like thrillers. I do a few the
There
JB
aren't
Turner
that many
series.
being released these days, from what I could tell.
What's that?
There just aren't that many thrillers being released these days.
I really don't know. But I do JB Turner series, I don't know what it's called, John Resnick series. And those are always a lot of fun. For whatever reason, I have this sort of style of narration where I sort of, people are like, they'll listen to a sci-fi and they're like, you should be doing like noir. I hear that a lot in the reviews. So maybe I should be doing more of that.
Nice. Well, with that, I'm pretty sure we have just a few questions on Facebook. So we're going to turn it over to the audience for some questions. And so we will pull up one of those questions. So we have one from Mitchell. Jeffrey, do you do a Shatner impression?
I do not.
He
Because, you
does
know, when I
not
interviewed
do
him,
a Shatner impression. Why
but he
would
didn't talk like
do
that. He didn't talk like that. I talked to the guy for an hour,
Yeah.
and he was just totally normal. I mean, he
Well,
was
he was like
90 years old
I'm
talking about
flying on the
quantum
galaxy
physics.
on a spaceship made out of cardboard and Christmas tree lights. I had to sell it. And he's right, he did.
Yeah. Do you?
So, no, I don't.
Long story short. With before we get the next one pulled up, is there someone that you love to I lost the word. I'm going with mimic. That's not the right word. Impersonate. That's also not the right word.
Impression.
Yes.
So I don't do impressions per se, but a lot of my characters. So most narrators have a toolbox of characters. Like, all my Russian women people sound like this, even the women, right?
Yeah.
The Russian general always sounds like, or even the American general is always going to sound like this because he's grizzled. Aren't all army generals grizzled, right? So I don't do impressions per se, but we all sort of have a toolbox of characters that we kind of fall back on, unless the character is specifically written to sound a certain way. And that's always fun, is to explore somebody new, like an alien. But I try not to model them after people, because the problem with, even in something like nonfiction where, so I did a fiction book where JFK showed up, time travel, blah, blah, blah. And I wasn't going to do a JFK impression, right? That's dangerous territory, right? Just, you don't sound like JFK. Well, no kidding.
Yeah.
You know, you sort of maybe give a flavor of it, but I try to stay away from impressions and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So, and I think it's easier when you're doing so many characters, especially with over 1,000 novels being narrated, you kind of have to have a little bit of your go-to voices too.
Yeah, and that's not to say they all sound the same, but right. I mean, it kind of makes sense to, borrow from previous narrations. Yeah. But each, obviously, the way it's written affects their personality and their character. So they're not identical characters. I just may use similar voices.
Yeah. Well, I think of it as like a baseline. You're kind of using that as like a building stone. So makes sense. All right, let's see another question. So we have one from Matt. Do you read reviews or customer feedback at all? So we'll open this one to anyone.
Nope. No, my wife handles all of my like Facebook stuff, and she responds to the emails. Every once in a while there's an email she says, I want you to respond to this or to read this. But nope, don't.
Much the same.
Don't. And I especially have a policy for like a month after a book comes out. I don't engage on social media. I don't look at anything. Just let the fans argue among themselves, and it'll wash out in the end. I don't write books. I write books for myself. I write the kind of books I want to read. And if somebody likes it, great. And if they don't, there's plenty of other authors out there. So there's really no, and if I wrote, Glynn the same way, if we wrote books based on trying to make people happy, that's based on the comments, the books would suck. They'd be written by committee. They just be watered down, mediocre, nothing. It wouldn't be our books.
No. I am not supposed to. I will admit that I occasionally am in my Amazon reviews, and it's not healthy for me, even on the good day. So, and it is something that I try very hard not to do. I generally do keep my engagement on social media with fans, etc., to quite limited. I am not a particularly social person, and if a bad review or a hostile email or something actually ends up hitting my my inbox, that can cost me a day of work if it hits me on the wrong day at the wrong time.
Wow.
Like, I can lose an entire day to someone being mean to me on the internet. Yeah, I should be more thick-skinned, but this is the reality of where I am. So to a large extent, my engagement with fans is rationed and moderated by my partner.
Yeah.
And
I read somewhere there's a reason why, like, your brain is set up to focus on bad news,
yes,
to
we are.
emphasize, because if we missed a bit of good news because we weren't paying attention, we don't get an extra banana that day. But if we missed a bit of bad news, we get eaten by a leopard. So your
Yeah.
brain is set up to focus on bad news. Yeah, I do not read. I
We
generally don't read
are.
reviews at all. But yeah,
We are evolved to watch for threats to the tribe.
yes,
We do
I
not
actually,
focus on the positive.
yeah.
I actually subscribe to a service. I'm going to deviate a lot from you guys. I subscribe to a service where every morning I literally get every single new review from an Audible book I've done. And I read them all. And I have long since learned to ignore the haters, the random one-offs. I didn't like this, but okay, whatever, go away.
Yeah.
What I look for and what I encourage other new narrators to do is don't focus on the reviews, but look for trends.
Mhm.
Right? If
Yeah.
100 people say that my female voices suck, that's something to listen to.
Yeah.
Right?
I
You
have
know,
had when I had employees, I don't currently. One of the things that they did for us was they would go through and they would read all the reviews and they would summarize it
Right.
Yeah, I
to
don't.
remove some of the personal feeling to it.
Right. And that's kind of something that's kind of what I do is I mean, I just sort of scan the reviews and I look for, whatever. Of course, it's always nice to see the glowing ones, but in terms of the bad ones, I just look for trends. Although my favorite one was, it was supposed to be a negative review. He said, "This guy sounds like a noir detective mixed with Batman." I was like, dude, I'm Batman.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's
Yeah.
the best review ever.
Yes. If you have an option to be Batman, be Batman. There's
Yes,
no question.
Yeah.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think we have time for one more audience question.
All right.
So Melissa asked, who are your favorite authors?
Oh, wow. There's so many of them. I'm looking at a bookshelf here. I've got Patrick O'Brien, Jack McDevitt, Dennis Taylor. I mean, Anne McCaffrey. I mean, just so many of them.
The
I'm going to fall back on the same
made-
two I always do, which is Lee McMaster Bejeweled and Nathan Lowell.
Oh, wow.
Those are
There's a longer list, and I don't think I've actually read anything. But Bejeweled she's older and not and is not working very much anymore. And I don't think she's actually put out anything in a while. But her Verkostigan saga is still like, I aspire to that.
Oh yeah.
The one book from my childhood that had the most seminal influence on me was A Boy's Life by Robert McCammon.
Solid choice, yes.
I would put him there.
Nice.
I mean, there are some books that I'll go back and read over and over every couple of years. And I'm hoping that someday, if I ever retire, on a rainy day, I'm going to start reading the Patrick O'Brien books, the ones that the movie Master and Commander was based on. Sailing ships in the Napoleonic Wars. Just the way it's written.
Commander will be sitting at the top of my to-be-read pile for at least 5 years.
Oh yeah, they're fantastic. The relationship between the captain of the ship and the doctor is just fantastic. It's just
Nice. Well, those are all wonderful recommendations, and a few of those I still haven't read, so those on my list now. But thank you so much, not only to Craig and Glynn and Jeffrey, but also to Podium for putting this live stream together and such a wonderful event. Of course, if you're listening in and you are interested in any of their novels, which I highly recommend that you should be interested in, or go pick them up right now. And of course, with Jeffrey,
Run, don't stop.
Exactly. Just don't fall.
yes,
Falling wouldn't be ideal.
yeah.
But I think
And you
especially
might be able to use the insurance payout to buy our books. So
that is a good option, especially because Jeffrey has over 1,000 books that he's narrated. And
it might take a while to get through. Yeah, that's true.
yeah, so I mean, if
Took
you're
me
like
15 years to narrate them.
yeah. So, but thank you so much for joining, and thank you for everyone tuning in. This was wonderful.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Happy reading.